are any tips to avoid a ball rolling animation to slide? So let's say you have a ball moving across the screen and you want it to not slide across. There are a few different ways you can do it. You can math it out. You can create a whole bunch of different things. And actually, let me share my screen and show exactly the process I would use. So let's just create a sphere here. I'm just going to go wireframe. Let's go right to the side view here. And I'm just going to turn on wireframe on shaded so that we can actually see it rolling. And let's move it forward. So we're going to have this go for, let's say, 72 frames. No real reason for that, just the number that came out. So it'll go there and it'll roll over here. Now let's open up the graph editor. And I just want to add a little bit of an ease out in here. Or sorry, an ease in. So just favor that a little bit. And we get this. Simple ball going across the screen. That's about it. Now we need to animate it rolling. How do we do that? How do we get this to roll nicely and believably without just having to guess and do a whole bunch of just hoping that it turns out? Well, there's a few different ways we can do it. The first way is we could math it out. We could actually figure out the math to create the proper roll for the distance that it's moving and all of this stuff. Blech. No, I'm not a fan of having to do math in animation more than I have to. And especially trying to figure out a rolling ball is just meh. Also, what if this ball isn't perfectly round, or it bounces off an object, or something else happens? It's going to be a nightmare of math. So instead, what I do is I just use what's already there, the translation of this sphere. So the translation is the movement forward. We can use that to build our rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my translation curve. I'm just going to copy it and paste it onto my rotation. So this is going to be rotate X. Edit, paste. There we go. Now we've got the sphere rolling. The problem is it's rolling in the wrong direction. For one, you can see it's actually rolling forward instead of backwards. So or actually wait, no, hey, it's actually rolling in the right direction for once. Usually it goes backwards. So yay, don't have to worry about that. So it's actually rolling in the right direction. And so we've got that, but it's not rolling nearly enough. So how do we get it to roll properly? Just scale up your curve. So I'm just going to take my scale tool, scale up the curve, and then scrub through. And when I'm trying to figure this out, I will just zoom in and watch to see if it feels like it's sliding or if it's rolling. If it feels like it's sliding in place, kind of just slipping on ice, scale up your curve a little bit more. Like that. Oh, almost there. Scale it up just a bit more. What does it feel like? So what I'm doing is I'm looking at like these points where the lines connect, and then just comparing it to the grid or any other object in the scene and seeing how it feels. So it's still sliding. Scale this up a little bit more. Oh, that's pretty close. Just a little scooch more. There we go. Let's kind of go to the end, because the ending usually you'll see it a little bit more when it comes to a stop. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now keep in mind, we're super zoomed in here. Once you go back to the distance here, no one's going to notice any little discrepancy. Then we get that nice perfect roll. Done. So it's a little bit of just kind of manual zoom in, adjust it. Now you could figure out the math and like for the ball, you could sometimes just times the curve by a certain amount. I'm not a fan of that, just because sometimes, depending on how the object is rigged, those don't always match up. Whereas just scaling it manually, you'll always get to the solution anyway. And it's just a little bit of finagling. It literally took, what, 30 seconds of just a little bit more, a little bit more, and then you're done. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Copy your curve. Sometimes you have to flip it and then scale it up, and you're good. That's really it. Yeah, and the audience will never know that you didn't do the math. And it was super quick, super easy. Done. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The main thing that you want to do is you want to make sure your translation is already pretty much polished before doing this, because any changes to your translation will now affect the roll, and then you'll have to redo the copy and all of that. Yes, as a beginner, it takes time. Animation is a long process, especially when you're starting out. You're learning so much, you're trying to deal with so much, you're learning the program, you're learning, there's a ton of things that go into animation. You're going to be slow at first. And the big thing with that is, and I tell this to all my students, don't worry about speed. Worry about understanding. Speed comes naturally. Speed comes with time. The longer you animate, the faster you'll get. And as you get more experience, you'll learn shortcuts and you'll be able to kind of focus a little bit more on speed. But when you're starting out, focus on understanding why you're doing things, why you're animating things a certain way, why you're moving something the way you're moving it. That is going to build speed better than just focusing on getting it fast, and trying to make your work like just, I'm going to do this in a week instead of a month. No, don't worry about that. Make sure you understand it, why you're doing it. And it's just going to come naturally. For example, when I first started animating, it took me, my very first ball bounce assignment took me 2 weeks to get it right. So if you take into account learning the ball bounce and then animating it, then doing a revision on it, when I was an animation mentor, that's 2 weeks worth of work before I got the ball bounce correct. I can do a ball bounce now in 5 minutes, literally, maybe less. And it'll be better than the first ball bounce I ever animated that took 2 weeks. That's a huge speed improvement. And that's, yes, it's a ball bounce, it's not that much. But the same thing applies for any mechanics. The first time you animate a walk or a vanilla walk, for any of you who've done this before, and most of you probably have if you're an animation mentor, you know the struggle of a vanilla walk and how painful it is. It was 2 weeks worth of work, and by the end, yeah, you probably could have polished it another week to get it final, if not more. Now, especially for those of you in class 6 or who have graduated, a vanilla walk is still tough. Vanilla walks are one of the hardest things you'll animate, but you don't have to struggle with understanding why you're doing it. You just have to do it, which makes it much faster. It's still going to take time, but that's normal. The first time you animate anything, you're testing things, you're understanding it, you're making mistakes, you're going the wrong direction before, coming back on track. That's normal. So yeah, don't worry about speed. You're going to get faster over time. So I actually did a talk on this that you can actually find it in the previous videos. Multiple smears and lines, I think it's called. But essentially, smear frames, multiples, these lines, they're a way to connect spacing. So let me actually show here. The reason we put any of these in, they all accomplish the same function. It's also the same function as a blur, a motion blur like this. The reason we use these is to connect our spacing. So for example, if we have a ball here that's moving from point A to point B, and let's say this is frame 1 and then this is frame 3. If we put in frame 2 and we want to put an ease out right there, this is going to pop. Our eyes are not going to be able to track the sphere from this point and then go all the way over here. It's just going to visually pop across the screen. So instead, we can use a smear to whoop, make that just really pushed. And now our eye goes from there, there, and there. It's the same spacing, but now our eyes connect much more clearly. So that would be a smear. You could do a line, so you could put the ball there and go whew. Anime tends to use this quite a bit. So something like that connects it. You could do multiples. So let's say you got 1 and 3, and then on frame 2, we'll do this in a different color. You have a ball there, kind of one there, one there. So on frame 2, it's all of this. And you could even use smears and multiples. So you could do something like that. You could also use smears, multiples, and lines. You can mix and match however you want. But the core of it is that we want to connect one pose to another. And do you usually smear on Photoshop? No, I do it in Maya. And I did a video on how to create all of those. So I would recommend checking that out. It's basically how to create lines, smears, and multiples all in Maya without any plugins or anything like that. So if you're interested in kind of doing that, I would check that out. As I desperately want to render this block out, this blocking pass, for feedback. But there's a part that needs work, and I know it's going to take time to resolve. What do I do? Now, this is actually a really good question, something I struggled with a lot when I was a student, which is you're working on a shot, you want to get feedback, you want to get someone to take a look at it and give you their opinion so that you're not working too far on this before you might have to do a change or you might have to tweak something. But there is a part that's just not working. Whatever it is about it, it's unclear, it's broken, maybe the animation is pretty much non-existent in that part. Whatever is happening, something about that section is not working. And what do you do? How do you progress with that? And honestly, the main thing that you would do is ask for feedback anyway. If you have a section of your shot that doesn't work, and this applies to a studio as well, you're working on your shot, you're dealing with some issues, and man, I can't get this first section to work, but I need to submit it, I need to get some feedback on it, do it. Just ask for feedback. The main thing is just let people know that you're having trouble with that first section, that it's not there yet. Just tell them to ignore it. Another way you do it is bring it into Premiere or something like DaVinci Resolve, a video editing software, and just take that section that you know doesn't work and that like you don't want people to focus on too much, and just put it in grayscale so that only the parts in color are the ones that show up, that show what you are working on. So it's very important, like D. Luchin just said there, the more feedback you get, the more you learn. It is a very collaborative art form. So instead of trying to solve everything 100% before getting feedback, ask for the feedback when you go into those situations. When you get to that point where it's like, I can't figure this out, it's not working, I don't know what to do. That is the perfect time to ask for feedback. Even if the shot is not working, if it's broken, if it's just, for lack of a better word, just randomness in there, and everything else is okay, and you've got that working, you can always ask, just clarify what you want feedback on. Do you want feedback on the parts that work? Or maybe you just want feedback on the section that isn't working. That could also be very helpful. Instead of kind of just turning your wheels, trying to solve this yourself, you can post and ask, like, how would you solve this? What do you think would be the best solution for this area? I'm having trouble
Maybe there's a character that spins in the air and does a flip, and I just can't get it. The arms are broken. I'm trying to block this in, and they're spinning in weird ways. Do you have any suggestions on how I can solve that? So instead of trying to figure out the problem on your own, you have other people help you. That's the process, and that's fine. In studios, it's the same thing. You're going to ask your animation leads, your animation supervisors, your fellow animators to get feedback. Now, the main thing with a studio, compared to just asking for your own sake, is that you wouldn't show that the version that doesn't work to your director, to the kind of, when you're submitting for dailies for kind of clarification on going forward, that's when you want to have something that is basically working. But before that point, you can always ask your supervisors and your other animators to get advice on what to do next if you're stuck on something. Always feel free to do that. So the short answer, ask for feedback. That's really the best thing to do. And don't worry about having everything polished. That was a mistake I made when I was a student. I would try to polish everything. I would try to submit my work for review only after I made sure that there was nothing left to review. So I would try to polish and polish and polish and polish and make it perfect, so that no one would have things to say, because I wanted to show like, hey, look, I know what I'm doing. And that was the absolute wrong thing to do. A horrible thing to do, because I focused so much of my time trying to fix problems that I thought I was seeing, that I was never getting enough review of what other people were seeing, the problems that they were looking at, and I never fixed those early on. It was really bad. You want to submit that for review as often as you can. It's just going to be better. So yeah, don't worry about getting it perfect. And sometimes don't even worry about getting it working. If it's not working, but you just have a section that you want reviewed, get it reviewed. Nothing wrong with that.